We also, though, turn our attention to overseas and two sets of high-stakes diplomatic negotiations taking place in Geneva, Switzerland today. Talks to end the war in Ukraine are being held just a week before the 4th anniversary of Putin's full-scale war. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner are set to take part in those talks, which come as Russia continues to launch missiles and drones into Ukrainian cities during the coldest months of winter. That's just one set of talks. Witkoff and Kushner will also take part in indirect talks with Iran today. Iran has sent its foreign minister to negotiate. It comes as the U.S. has built up a heavy military presence in the Middle East, all to put pressure on Iran. Last night on Air Force One, President Trump said he still thinks Iran wants to make a deal. Watch.
So I'll be involved in those talks indirectly, and they'll be very important, and we'll see what can happen. I mean, it's been typically Iran's a very tough negotiator. They're good negotiators, or bad negotiators. I would say they're bad negotiators because we could have had a deal instead of sending the B-2s in to knock out their nuclear potential, and we had to send the B-2s. I hope they're going to be more reasonable. They want to make a deal.
Have you been told that a deal is next to impossible?
No, I think they want to make a deal. I don't think they want the consequences of not making a deal. They want to make a deal.
Let's go right to the ground in Geneva with MS Now international reporter Inez de la Cuetara. Inez, I think that was our friend Steve Holland in the White House press corps, basically giving the president a reality check on, okay, you think they want to make a deal, but do they really? So talk a little bit about the contours of the discussions with the Iranians right now and what you might expect to hear coming out of that meeting, if anything.
Yeah, Ali, so we are standing just outside the location where the talks are being held. Our cameras did catch a motorcade going into the location just about an hour ago. Our sources tell us that was the Iranian delegation. We haven't actually seen the American delegation, but Iranian state media is reporting that they are inside and the talks have begun. We know it's the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and the special envoy, Steve Witkoff, that are leading the American delegation. On the Iranian side, it is the Iranian foreign minister. In terms of what they are actually going to be discussing, we know that there are three kind of big issues the Americans want to talk about. So Iran's nuclear program, of course, Iran's support to proxies in the region, and Iran's ballistic weapons. The Iranians have indicated that only the nuclear issue is on the table, but they do seem to be indicating some willingness to make concessions. And I think worth noting that yesterday, the Iranian foreign minister did meet with the head of the International Atomic because after the U.S.'s strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, Iran had pretty much suspended all of its cooperation with the IAEA. Inspectors had been allowed into Iran, but not to the sites that were targeted by the U.S. So that could be seen as a gesture of goodwill from the Iranians. Worth pointing out, though, that the Iranians also yesterday conducted live military drills in the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranians have repeatedly threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz in retaliation for any attacks on their territory, which would obviously have a big impact on trade, and specifically the oil trade. And that comes as the Americans have sent that large armada to the Middle East. We know a second U.S. aircraft carrier is on the way as well. So both the Americans and the Iranians clearly projecting strength ahead of these talks. And just worth pointing out, Ali, that of course these talks we know are going to be indirect talks. They're not actually going to be coming face to face. They are instead going to be meeting separately with the Omanis who are mediating these talks.
MS Now international reporter Inez de la Cuetara live from Geneva. Inez, I know if there's any news in the meeting behind you, you will come and bring it to us as soon as possible. Thank you. I want to bring in here on set with me retired CIA officer Mark Polymeropoulos. He's an MS Now national security and intelligence contributor. So, Mark, I like that Inez broke this down into the three buckets that you were breaking this down into me right before we got on the air. The nuclear, ballistics, and the support of proxies. These are sort of the three fronts that they're going to be negotiating on. But importantly, the way that Inez mentions that the Iranians are saying the focus today is just on the nuclear file, just on the nuclear piece of the equation. Why does that strike you? And what does that actually tell you about what these talks are going to center on?
So I think, Ali, this is pretty significant because the nuclear file is actually the one in which there could be room for compromise. Now, this may look a little bit like a JCPOA 2.0. That's the old Obama-era deal. But in essence, it has to do with the percentage of enrichment that's allowed. And don't forget, Steve Witkoff actually hinted even weeks and months ago that we might go past this notion of no enrichment. Now, the Iranians announced just in the last several hours that this is going to be the only subject of the talks, which I think for a lot of people who are trying to assess, is this really a march to war? You might see this as part of a sequencing strategy in which progress is made on the nuclear file, and then you get to the more contentious issues the Iranian ballistic missile program, which the Israelis are terrified about, as well as Iranian support to proxies, which we care about. So really high stakes diplomacy right now. And let me just say one quick thing in terms of my old crew at the CIA, the U.S. intelligence community. They are going to be working nonstop on this because what you have to do is to assess Iranian seriousness. If, for example, they pick up whether through signals intelligence, that's intercepts of communications, or human spies, ours, penetrations of the Iranian government, that the Iranians are serious, that's going to be, of course, passed to the U.S. team, and then there's a chance for diplomacy. But if we see them being intransigent, this is all kind of for show, you have a massive armada. 1/3 of the deployed U.S. Navy is now in the region. 400 combat aircraft, including the U.S. and the Israelis, are poised to strike. So the stakes are very high today.
The stakes are extremely high. And then you see the president there saying that he will be indirectly involved in the indirect talks. And I think one of the things when you mention, well, Witkoff left the door open to some small percentage of uranium enrichment, Trump himself actually then tried to close that door, saying, no, I won't tolerate anything less than zero. Do you think that's because of a recent meeting with Netanyahu? Do you think where is the push coming from when he puts a statement out like that? And then also for negotiators who are in the room, Witkoff and Kushner, as it so often is on these top topics, is Trump able to then just come in over the top and undo what they've done? I mean, that's always been the fear of diplomats going back to the first term.
I think Trump kind of poked his nose into this issue because he realizes he's going to be absolutely politically hammered if he goes for a nuke deal that does have some kind of conciliatory mechanisms for the Iranians. And so, perhaps it's because Netanyahu was in his ear several days ago, or he sees kind of from his right flank in the U.S. some criticism that an Obama-type deal is coming. But he's going to be involved one way or the other. It's going to be, I wonder if, Witkoff and Kushner are going to actually call him from Geneva to update him on the talks.
You've got to wonder that. And then I think there's also this piece of the equation of the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, isn't part of these talks, but he is praising Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban after a high-profile meeting in Budapest. Rubio met with Orban yesterday, highlighting what he called the close personal ties between Orban and President Trump and signaling strong White House backing ahead of Hungary's closely contested April elections. Watch.
I can say to you with confidence that President Trump is deeply committed to your success because your success is our success. Because this relationship we have here in Central Europe through you is so essential and vital for our national interests in the years to come. That, if you face financial struggles, if you face things that are impediments to growth, if you face things that threaten the stability of your country, I know that President Trump will be very interested because of your relationship with him and because of this importance to this country, to us, to finding ways to provide assistance if that moment ever were to arise.
So for a man, Marco Rubio, who used the word small d democracy in Munich many, many times during his speech, to go there and praise someone who has worked very hard to erode small d democratic values is notable. And the fact that he is not part of the delegation doing Iran talks, doing the Ukraine-Russia talks, especially when on Russia, he is someone who brings, I think, the most clarity around Russia as an adversary in this administration, at least from when he was a senator.
So, look, I think everybody after Munich kind of was taking a look at the tone of his speech. It was much softer.
Yes.
But as we kind of are a couple of days out, I look back at our friend from Julia Yaffe, frequent contributor for MS Now.
Yeah.
She called the Rubio speech Vance, or Diet Vance, which I thought was brilliant in the sense that actually the substance was the same. The tone might have been different, and Europe is waking up. And what does that mean? He then goes to Hungary. I mean, Hungary, first of all, is a country that's the scourge of Europe in terms of support for democracy, freedom of expression, and with a very pro-Russian dent. And then Rubio, in fact, gives Orban, who's coming up in an election in April, a campaign boost from Trump. So the idea, like I was part of the kind of, hey, Rubio is the adult in the room crowd.
Yeah.
This was a little bit shocking because just that overt kind of campaign endorsement of a leader in Europe who is really detested by all and who is seen as part of this nationalist right, and in particular a pro-Russian sentiment. So not a great day for Rubio. And guess what? He's the Secretary of State. Where is he? Geneva is the center of really the world right now, and he is not there.
Yeah, I think that that's really important, especially when you consider the ways that some in your traditional foreign policy apparatuses here in Washington don't love the fact that Witkoff already doesn't come from a traditional background of diplomacy, and yet he is the person who is in the room for all of these high-stakes negotiations alongside Jared Kushner. I know from our colleagues who were on the ground in Munich, there is concern from some senators with deep foreign policy backgrounds that maybe there are business deals that are tied in with other diplomatic actions here. I mean, that mixing of private and governmental diplomacy just is not how any of this ever works. And the fact that it's looming over it, I think, is concerning. And again, who's in the room really does matter. It's not just me as a reporter, you know, doing the Kremlinology, if you will. It matters who's in the room and who's doing these talks and what their background is. Retired CIA officer Mark Polymeropoulos, it matters that you can bring us this expertise. Deeply grateful, as always. Thank you.